Hi, today we're going to identify the elements of a plot analysis diagram by applying them to a very familiar movie, The Wizard of Oz. So first of all, the plot diagram basically has 5 parts. There's the exposition, the point of attack, rising action that goes all the way to a climax or a crisis, followed by falling action or the denouement, and finally the resolution so that the audience goes away from the play satisfied. So remember, the definition of a plot is that it's the organized pattern or sequence of events that make up a play. Every plot is made up of a series of incidences that are related to each other. Now remember, we are talking about a classical plot, not some more modern and postmodern type of plot. So remember that as we're going along. This is also called a climactic plot. So the first thing that we want to talk about is exposition. Exposition usually occurs at the beginning of a play, and here we find out about the story itself, what's happened so far, the characters that live in the play, the setting of the play. Most importantly, we are introduced to the main problem or the conflict. Exposition can also be revealed during the play. So let's take a quick look at The Wizard of Oz. At the beginning of The Wizard of Oz, we find out that Dorothy lives with Uncle Henry and Auntie Em, that she's upset with her life, that she looks for adventure. So what happens? She runs away. Later on in the play, some exposition that we find out about things that have happened before the actual movie began was, for example, the Wizard of Oz himself, we find out, used to live in Kansas, and he flew into Oz in the balloon. So there's an example of something we learned about the backstory before the play began, but it's actually revealed to us later. Okay, so exposition. Then, after the exposition, there's a place in the play where the protagonist is actually kick-started into action. For Dorothy, I maintain it happens when the cyclone drops her house on the Wicked Witch of the West, and she's forced, or Witch of the East, I'm sorry, and she's forced then to go to Oz. So all the things that happen after that to Dorothy are pretty much what we call rising action. The conflict develops, suspense happens, she meets all of her wonderful friends, and they take her on this journey that ultimately ends in the climax, the turning point of the story. And for me, the climax of the story is really where Dorothy misses that ride in the balloon. At this point, what can she do? All the action has come built to that one time where she's going to get in that balloon and go back to Kansas, right? And she is changed by this. So then at this point, Glinda takes her back to Oz via the ruby slippers. We find out that Dorothy has changed, the denouement, the falling action, and this usually happens pretty quickly. Everything gets unraveled and untangled pretty quickly in classical literature and classical plays. So finally, until it's resolved, the audience is happy, the audience sees Dorothy home, the audience believes that Dorothy is going to go on and be a much more happy and productive person and have a great life. Okay, so plot diagram, exposition, things that happen before the actual point of attack begins. And remember, the exposition can be either revealed in the beginning or parts of it can be revealed later in the play. The point of attack kickstarts the protagonist into acting, and events occur, suspense builds all the way to a climax crisis, at which point excuse me, at which point the protagonist is no longer acting and things change with the denouement, the falling action, and finally they're resolved for the audience. And that is how we begin to look at plot.